The legacy approaches to sales don't work in our modern age. They're impersonal, they fail to create value, and generally waste everyone's time. Success requires that you replace your outdated sales approach with new strategies and tactics designed for our uncertain environment. These new approaches are built on creating value for your clients inside the sales conversation and differentiating you from your competition, making you one up. Anthony Iannarino has been documenting the evolution of complex sales every day at thesalesblog.com since the end of 2009. He is the best-selling author of 4 books on sales and 1 book on sales leadership. Anthony has mapped out a path to fearless value creation and a truly consultative approach to sales, one that will help you create and win new deals. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Anthony Iannarino.
Morning. Let's make sure I got sound here. Good morning, how are you? It's good to see all of you back. I don't know what the blood alcohol level is in here. I can't sense it from this far, but I have a feeling that it might be close to 3 or 4 by now. Did you have a great day yesterday? Was that not the best speakers you've ever seen in a sales conference? Give them a hand. This is Outbound. This is how it goes all day, starting right now. My job here is to provide you with what I would call a perceptual lens. So what I want to do is show you something that you've not seen and explain to you how it's helpful. So you know how sometimes you get along with certain people and other times you don't, and you recognize that people are different and they have different sort of personalities. Well, what I'm going to show you is something that's based off of something called the Enneagram. And the Enneagram is something that we use to determine what somebody's archetype is like. So I'm going to show you 9 of these, and I'm going to tell you stories about individual clients that I've had and how I was able to trigger them in ways that harmed my results or harmed their results or both of our results. So there's a lot of content here. The slide will come up behind me. If you want to take a picture of it, take a picture of it. If you know what the Enneagram is, raise your hand. Okay, all good. So when I start describing you, please don't feel bad about the bad things I'm about to say to each one of you individually as we go through this. So this is what the Enneagram looks like. There's 9 major types. Those types fall into 3 categories. So there's fear-based types, there's anger types, and there's something called body types. You also have multiple ways to look at this. So there's generally 27 things. So there's a social peacemaker, there's a self-preservation peacemaker, and then there's also a sexual peacemaker. That's not that kind of sex. It's more of like a Freudian kind of thing. So I'm going to walk you through each one of these so that you can recognize or start to recognize these archetypes. The best way for you to learn this, I'll tell you this at the beginning, and maybe take a note on this if you actually want to get really good at understanding who somebody is, then what you should do is take your own Enneagram, get your family to do it, and it makes it easier for you to see these on other people. There's 2 concepts that we need at the beginning of this that I'm going to go through really quick for you. There's something called strategic empathy. And strategic empathy is what we use when we look at somebody like Vladimir Putin and we try to figure out what we have to do to try to tamp down this Ukraine thing. So we use something called strategic empathy, which means not strategic narcissism. Strategic narcissism is believing that everyone will do what you will do in that situation because you're looking through it your lens. You have to figure out how to look at it through another person's lens, and you'll be able to do that if you pay attention to this and if you actually just start studying and start guessing what people are. It's easier if you have a family and you do it with them because then you can start to recognize them a lot easier. Okay, so the first one is called the peacemaker. This is actually one of the anger types. And what happens to somebody when they're young is what causes these things. So their sin is indolent. So this is sort of like a laziness. But it's not like a laziness around work. It's around a laziness of like dealing with their own emotions. And what generally happened to them, you can see sloth, you can see that is just more of a psychological thing than it is just being a bad person that doesn't do anything. Their opinions were never acknowledged when they were a child. So if you're a 9, you probably had a dominating parent or dominating people around you, and you don't like the conflict. So what you do is you just push that down. That conflict gets pushed down, and you decide that you're going to try to make everybody happy and try to get rid of conflict. You will focus on other people. You will focus on what's happening. You'll try to make sense of things and try to make harmony where there isn't any harmony. So these are the kinds of things that if you trigger people and you start conflict and they're a peacemaker, they're not going to have a very good time talking to you because you started conflict, and that's the last thing they want. What they really want is peace. So that's what they want. They want something very different. They're nice. They're emotionally stable. I'll show you the patterns here. If you say this is our agenda, they'll accept it. They'll just take that right out of the gate because that's what they want. They don't need your conflict. They don't like to be controlled, and they don't really like getting a lot of attention. So my wife is here, and I won't point at you because she's a peacemaker. She's a 9. So I have a number of 9s in my life. You probably do too. This is how you can trigger them. So this is the part that you have to pay attention to. If you recognize that somebody doesn't like it when other people are in conflict, and I come from a family of 6, if you're in a family of 6, then conflict is the everyday thing that you do, then you might be making people uncomfortable. They don't like harsh criticism. They don't like to be the center of attention. They don't want those things. They also don't like to be rushed or confronted. So anytime you're in a situation with a 9, then you have to make sure that you understand that if you're not trying to create harmony, you're giving yourself problems. And they might be working for somebody. You might be in a room with multiple people, and I'll try to give you a better way to do this with a story. I've changed all the names of these clients. When I decided to do this presentation, I wrote down all 9, and I tried to come up with a story that went to each one of these, and I thought it would take me a long time to do it. It took me 6 minutes, but I was missing the one, and I found a story for the one from my dad. So this person I'm calling Hampton Vista. Hampton Vista's boss was a very difficult person. He owed me $3 million. He was treating my team terrible because that was his nature. And he was roughhousing the people that we were placing in his facility. I asked the CFO to pay me the $3 million that they owed me. And that person said, I can't do that. I need to talk to the boss, a guy named David. David wasn't there when I was there. I got in my car and I left, and David came in right after me, and he called me on my cell phone. And all of the first words that he used I won't say here because they're all 4-letter words. And so he was very angry with me. And he said, if you ever ask my company to give you that money, I will fire you. And I said, no, you won't. And he said, yes, I will. I said, in 30 minutes, you're going to get a letter from me telling you that we're no longer taking care of you, and I'm canceling your contract. And he said, you wouldn't dare. And I said, well, wait for your facts. And I fired him. Now, Hampton is a peacemaker. And Hampton intervened and made sure we got the money because that's his job as the peacemaker. And the only reason that business ran is because Hampton was a possible way to have a conversation without having to deal with David. Long story short, David took all of his investors' money and ran off with it and ended up in prison. So that's the kind of person I was working with at that time. These people are very helpful if you need to make peace. So if you need somebody to be an intermediary and somebody who's the diplomat, this is the right person for you to look for. Okay, so if you think that any of these are negative, I'm just going to show you that none of these archetypes means that you're not going to be successful. Queen Elizabeth II, Audrey Hepburn, Reagan, Mr. Rogers. Like, these are people who are very, very, very well-known 9s. Okay, I'm going to keep going. Challenger, type 8. Their sin is lust, not that kind of lust. Well, that kind of lust too, but lust for everything. So they want all the things all the time. That's who they are. Their fear is being vulnerable. And so they get really strong and they grow up really fast. Their fixation is vengeance. And then the worst thing for an 8 is not being self-sufficient. Like, I have to do it myself. I take care of me. If that's you, you're probably an 8, if you recognize yourself there. Their adaptation is what happened in their childhood. So there was an environment that was a lot of conflict. They had to grow up really fast. They were tough. I mean, you just have to become a tough person if you're in this sort of environment. And they end up being really strong, really powerful, and fearless. That's just how they end up because they had to. So it's their adaptation. If you say to an 8 that they have a weakness, they will argue with you that they don't. They make very fast decisions. So a lot of the entrepreneurs that you run into, many of them may be 8s. And if you see that they've already got the concept and you keep talking, you are going to trigger them. Like, they've already made the decision. It's instinctual for them. They don't need you to keep talking. They've already made the decision. Just say yes, hand them a piece of paper, make them sign, they're ready to go. They don't believe that they should have any authority greater than themselves. So they're not happy when someone else is trying to tell them what to do. You're nodding because you're probably an 8. Yeah, I would guess that from you. It's pretty easy. I can see some things on people pretty easy. They don't like BS, and they're super controlling. That's just what they are. They crave sensate experiences. They rebel. It's just who they are. Big picture thinkers. They will protect weak people. They will. So if you see a bully, and an 8 will be the person that will deal with a bully no matter what, because they can't stand the injustice. They don't like people being manipulated. They don't like people being taken advantage of. So a lot of people who are 8s have done a lot to make the world a better place because they are going to intervene and try to make things fair. If there's any pretense, if you're a pushover, these are the kinds of things that's going to cause an 8 to be triggered by you. I've noticed that the more time it takes for you to talk to them after they've made a decision is a real trigger. So they empower their loved ones. They speak out against injustice. They encourage others. They're very protective. They're also egocentric, domineering, confrontational, and intimidating. So some of the people that you might recognize are Martin Luther King Jr., Clint Eastwood, Mark Cuban, Winston Churchill, and Anthony Iannarino. I'm a solid 8. I've been a solid 8 for a long time. The other noteworthy 8s are Saddam Hussein and Fidel Castro and people like that. So there's good and bad with this one, just so you know. I got 2 stories here I'll tell you. I signed a contract with a client. In these meetings that we had, there was another 8 in the room with me, and his name was Watts. And we had this conversation. I was going to put somebody on site in one of their facilities, and then I promised I would have people sign in the employees we were sending at the other 2 facilities. When we sat down to sign the contract, Watts read the contract and said, "You lied. You said you were going to give us a person for every single one of our facilities." And I said, "I did not say that. I did not say that. I said you could have this one, I'll have the other 2 sign them in." And he said, "You lied." And then I stood up because I'm an 8. And I said, "Now I'm not signing the contract. I'm not going to sign it. If you think I lied to you to get your business, I'm not signing this contract." Well, a guy named Monty Pickens, who was a full bird colonel from Vietnam, happened to be the HR manager. And I stood up, and then Watts stood up. So it's getting pretty tense pretty quick. And Monty said, "Both of you sit down and sign that contract." Everybody heard what he said. And now I'm afraid of Monty. Monty was a lot angrier than Watts was. So this is the thing that happens. So he was pushing because he wanted something that we had already agreed he wasn't going to get, and somebody else has to intervene. Monty did that for me. The second one is the last story I tell in the book, Elite Sales Strategies, where a person was not getting the results that they needed from us because they were underpaying. And I was called in New York and told I had to fly back and meet with this person. And I'll just lose his last name. His name was Toner. And when I came into the room, I flew all the way back to Columbus to try to help him. And he saw me sit down in the chair because he looked like this. And then he went back to writing on this whiteboard just to make sure that he had the powerful position, right? So he looked at me, but then he didn't acknowledge that I was sitting there. And so I sat there and I waited. And after he was done writing, he walked over to me and he said, "Why are you not helping us?" And I said, "I told you for the last 2 years you're under market, and at some point in the future you're not going to be able to get the results you want unless you pay more." And he said, "Your competitor sat in that same chair that you're sitting in and told me our pay rate wasn't a problem." I said, "You're using 4 agencies right now. You didn't get a single person this week from any single of the 4 agencies that you're using." And he said, "Are you saying that he's lying?" And I said, "No, he's afraid of you and I'm not. I'm going to tell you the truth." He was not happy with me, but I'm an 8, and he's like an 8 plus. It's just like Stalin, like he's pretty close. He took my advice, he raised the pay rate, and as soon as we got them through their peak season, he fired me. $6 million deal. Yeah, I know, shake your head no, me too. I was like, no. I helped him, but this is what happens when you deal with 8s. 8s are more difficult people to work with, except me, of course, I'm easy. Yeah, everybody knows. I'm a good 8. The enthusiast. This is a disappointing story for me too. I'm sorry, I'll tell you at the end of this, but this is a different kind of person here. So the enthusiast is basically an Epicurean. And what happens to them, their sin is gluttony, but it's not food gluttony. It's more, I want to have certain experiences. So it's not something about food. They feel being trapped and they feel like they've been deprived. So those are things that happen to them. If you know somebody who's planning, and they plan, and they plan, and they plan, and then they don't do, probably a 7. That's generally 2. They want to be satisfied, and they really want to be content, so they like comfort quite a bit. Something happened to them in their childhood, and what it caused them was some sort of distress. And they had that distress, and what they decided is like, I don't like to feel that, so I'm going to remove anything that's distressing for me. Any negative thing that goes on, I want no part of it at all because I want to be happy. And why would you be sad if you could be happy? So that's how they act. They're pleasure seeking. They always look, if I showed you the data and you're a 7, you'd look at the good part of the data and just ignore the bad part of the data completely because you don't see it. You don't want to see it. You're not going to look at it. You're going to believe that everything's great. They are the most optimistic of us. They're very optimistic, but they lack discipline. They think fast and they talk fast. They're often very, very entertaining people and very educated people. They don't want to be trapped. They can't stand boredom. They have to be doing something because they're bored all the time. They don't like to be controlled or micromanaged. You will trigger them if you're overly negative. And they always want to preserve their time for themselves. So if you know this, that's this person. They're energetic, they're bubbly, they live life to the fullest. They're funny, they're positive, they're great to be around, but they misapply their talent, they're distracted, they're undisciplined. These are 7s. I've got a brother that's a 7, I've got a son that's a 7. I know their archetypes because I've watched them for a very long time. But you can still be very successful like Mozart, Thomas Jefferson, Katy Perry, and Bette Midler. These are people who are all known to be 7s. So far, so good? Taking notes? All right, thinking about your family members? Thinking about that difficult client that you have? You're like, probably an 8. There's other ones that are bad too coming, just so you know. I'm just going to call this guy Nick West. Nick West is Peter Pan. He's not grown up. He's very fun to be around. I spent hours and hours and hours with Nick. I've got pages and pages and pages of notes that I took from Nick. And on a Friday morning, he gave me a verbal on a $2 million deal annually. On Monday morning, he called me to say, I signed a contract with your competitor. I'm like, remember Friday? Like, that was like a couple days ago when you said, and he said, yeah. I said, I'm on my way over. That's my nature. I'm an 8, so I'm trying to drive over and have the conflict. I laid down all of my notes in front of Nick. I went through all of the notes and I said, where in any of these notes do you see safety manager? And he said, I didn't know I wanted one until I saw one. And I'm like, that's not even going to help you with your problems in any way, shape, or form. And he said, I'm not going to change my decision. I signed their contract. It didn't help him. And 6 months later, he came back. But this is the kind of person. Like, they're just Peter Pan. They're not serious. Like, he's talking, but he wasn't really saying what he meant. He was just talking because I was there sitting across from him. So these are enthusiasts, and they can be difficult too. The loyalist. Another terrible story. Another one. It wasn't that hard for me to do this because bad things happen in sales, right? The loyalist, their sin is their cowardice. That's what they are. Their fear is not having the support that they need or the guidance, and this is all, again, an adaptation to something that happens to you when you're a child. They want support and they want guidance, and they often don't get it, and they have this certain reaction. If there were threats to them in their life in the very early ages, if they experience the world as a dangerous place, if they have a caretaker who is an alcoholic or a really difficult personality like that can be difficult for them, and this is why they sort of adapt this way. Their radar is always on. My mom is a 6. I would walk in the house with somebody, and she would know that person was a bad kid, like with 4 seconds. Like, her radar is always on. It's still always on. She's 75 years old. It's still constantly scanning the environment. She did have an alcoholic father. Her mom, my grandmother, divorced him. He got sober. They remarried, and he became an alcoholic again. And then she threw him out the second time. They want good authority. They want to work with people that are good, that they think they can trust. They are naturally low trust. You can't do anything about their natural low trust. They have it. They're going to ask more questions. They're going to be more of a devil's advocate than you've ever seen. And it won't be your fault. It's just the way that they perceive the world. They're suspicious. They're just suspicious of you right out of the gate. They also do this thing that you can see where some people are good and other people are bad. They just put you in one of two categories. You're either a good person or you're a bad person. There's no middle ground at all. And that is my mom. And I think that she thinks I'm probably on the bad side. She would say, he was a rough kid. They question everything. And they will absolutely be the devil's advocate in a room because they want to be certain and they can't be certain. If you're undependable, if you're wishy-washy, if you are slick, that's the word that my mom uses, like slick people. She's like, nope, no slick people. If you don't address their anxieties or you don't take it seriously, you start to have a problem with them. Like, they can't move forward with you if you do that. Any harsh criticism or any kind of dishonesty will end this for you. Their triggers are being in relationships with people who are just not candid. They want to know who you are right out of the gate. They don't like feeling manipulated or vulnerable, and they don't like pretentious people. Imagine having that for your mom, and you have a lot of these things in you. And that was me. She's not my example, though. They will love you despite your faults. So that's the best thing that ever happened to me. From all my childhood things, I always had unconditional love from a mom. They are so hardworking. My mom's the hardest worker I've ever met. She's also the kindest person I've ever met. She's the most generous person I've ever met. When we had no money, she would buy Christmas presents for the people that lived behind us who didn't have any money, even though we didn't have any money. They're defensive, they're evasive, they're anxious, and they have a lot of self-doubt. Like Jennifer Aniston, Joe Biden, Marilyn Monroe, and George H.W. Bush. You can still be pretty good, right? Even if you're a 7. This guy flew in on his own plane to Columbus, Ohio to have a meeting with me. And what he was trying to do is get the labor that he needed for his business. And I do this thing where I do an executive briefing and I teach people a way to understand what the environment is like so they can make better decisions. That's one of the things that I do, is I teach people, this is what's going on, this is what you're going to need to know if you want to be successful. And Barry sat down, and he told me he flew in his own plane. He needed me to know that. And then he told me how successful he was, and he needed to tell me that. And I let him tell me these things. And then I started giving him this briefing. And I explained to him the 2 assumptions in staffing that I knew for sure. You believe that labor is abundant, and you believe that labor is cheap. Well, in Columbus, Ohio, neither of those 2 things are true. It's not abundant, it's not cheap. So I show Barry all the data. I walk him through it. I'm giving him data point after data point after data point, and the whole time he's skeptical. He doesn't believe anything I have to say. Now, I'm doing my best, and I'm trying to explain to him, you're in North Carolina. You might be able to pay what you're paying in North Carolina, but you can't pay it here and get the people that you need, and you're going to fail when you get to the 4th quarter. And he said, I don't believe you. And I said, well, I'm never going to lie to you. I'm going to tell you if you don't go up by about $7,000 a year per person, you're not going to have anybody. And he said, I've never had trouble getting people. And I said, you're going to. In September, you're dead. And then, to make the point, I said, what you should do today is get a shovel and go out back behind the building and dig a hole where you can bury your business in September. I'm trying to get his attention. I still don't have his attention. And he said, we're not going to have any trouble getting people. And I said, friend, you're not going to get your people. And you're going to call me in September, and I'm going to be unable to help you because everybody will already have taken all of the slack out of the labor market. So you're not going to be able to do this. In September, my phone rang. It wasn't Barry. He wasn't going to make this call, but it was the person that worked for him. And they said, we can't get anybody. I tried to solve that. I tried to solve it in July. I tried to teach him this. I showed him all the data. He didn't believe it. And in September, they couldn't get the people. They lost their 3 major clients who went to another company that paid $14 to the $9 that they wanted to pay, and that business has now gone away. Now, I blame myself for this. I tried using data. I tried helping him. I did everything in my power, but he just wouldn't trust me that I was telling the truth. But then he found out I was telling the truth, and if I would have been a better salesperson, I would have been able to convince him. I did everything in my power, including trying to say something as horrible as get a shovel, even though I kind of enjoyed that. It was kind of fun. I had to tell him the truth. And the truth is always what you have, right? No matter what you're dealing with, you have to tell the truth. It's the truth at any price, even the price of a deal. And for me, it's always still, even for the deal. I'm not going to lie or say anything I don't need to try to win that business. Who knows who Sam Harris is? Okay, some people. Jordan Peterson. Yeah, some people know that. These are 5s. These are people who live in their own head. That's where they live. They don't really live in the world that we live in. They're just constantly up here. So I'll show you who they are. They're observers. Their sin is greed, but not the greed that you're thinking of. It's not greed for money. It's greed to have control of their own time. So if you have a 5 in a room and you can recognize this, you're going to have to pivot, especially you. I'm going to say personally you. I can tell enough about you. I know, I've watched you, so I know this. They're greedy. Their fear is being helplessness. They don't want to be incompetent, and they're stingy with their time. Very stingy with their time. They want to be a master of some domain. Like they want to have a very, very deep knowledge of something. So they're in books and they stay at home alone. And by the way, you could have what's called a wing. So you could be a 7 and have a 5 wing. And this would mean that you're going to like to spend time by yourself, have total control over your own calendar, and not have to deal with relationships. So a 5 doesn't want your relationship. So you heard a lot about like emotional connection with people over here yesterday, right? You heard a lot of that. You try that with a 5, and you're not going to do very well. If you say, hey, why don't we go to dinner after this meeting? I don't even want to work with you anymore. I'm a 5. I want to go home and forget I had any conversation with you today because I want to go back to this. People who shut their doors, when you're in a building and you notice that people shut their doors, might be a 5. They might want to be getting away from you. They're trying to find their security and their privacy. They are introverts. Even though Jordan Peterson talks, and even Sam Harris talks, that's really about them. They are not extroverts in any way, shape, or form. They're very introverted people, and they like that. When they were young, something happened to them where other people overwhelmed them, and the way that they adapted to it is to say, I'm just going to disengage from these people. Another thing that could happen to you to make you a 5 would be you don't have enough. And so you're deprived of something that you need, and this is one of the adaptations to that. So now I'm going to try to start hoarding so that I can have the things that I need. If you deprive them of time, then you're harming yourself. These are people who go as fast as you need to go with them. Once they've said something, they have to go away. Get your commitment, be done. They live in their head. They minimize their needs and their resources. They don't need a lot of things. If you're an 8, you need everything. You're very lusty, but these people don't. They can live with very little. They're interested in knowledge. They will feel to you like they're distant. If this has happened to you, raise your hand. You've sat down across from someone and they don't do any talking. You ever have that experience? And you're like, why are they not talking? And you ask them a question and they're like, yeah, that's it. And like, do they not like me? No, they don't not like you. They don't like anybody. They don't like anybody. They like to be with them. And if you find them in a group, if you ever find a group of 5s together, it's because they all like the same thing. They all like the same thing. They're all studying the same things. They're reading the same things. Those are the only people that they could stand. I have no idea why, because I'm not a 5, but you might be one, or you might run into them. They will not engage with you like an 8 or another person. They isolate themselves. So the first one on here is important for you to recognize. Being forced to socialize to a 5 is the lowest level of hell. That's like you're taking them. If you've read Dante, you know that hell is actually the lowest level is freezing. They're freezing. Like that's what you do to them. The more you try to get them to have this relationship with you, the more you start pushing them away. And don't interrupt them. Like if you interrupt them, you're hurting yourself. These are just triggers for them. They don't like bossy and controlling people. They don't like criticism. I don't know if you've ever watched Jordan Peterson when he's criticized. Like you can actually sometimes see him get emotional about that. I'm using him because I've seen his videos where he starts to get emotional over things like this. They don't like emotionally chaotic environments. They like stability. They don't like having their views dismissed or trivialized, and they don't like incompetent or what they would call unintelligent people. So these are the signals that you're looking at a 5. Good side, super curious people. They're absolutely students. They're gonna be very curious. They're gonna read. They always want to learn more. They do like learning. If you can help them learn something, that's good. That's going to serve you. They're great listeners. They will listen to you because they are trying to learn something, and they will give you their honest opinions, even if you don't like their honest opinions. They're preoccupied, though. So the person that you're talking to who's a 5 is thinking about other things that they find more interesting than you, even though you're sitting across from them. That's who they are. So if you've ever felt that, now you know it's a 5. And so what you should do is speed things up for them and tell them, like, I'm only going to need a very short amount of your time because I understand you're busy and we can take care of this in just a few minutes. So if you can do that, you're going to have a better shot getting a 5 to like you and to potentially buy from you. Like Einstein, Agatha Christie, Jane Austen, and Mark Zuckerberg. Now, Mark Zuckerberg on this one is just the perfect person to look at. Does he have a human emotion? I haven't seen one. I've not seen one from him. Did he come from a planet of fish people? I think he did. Like, when you look at him, you're like, he's not from around here. Like, he's from some part past the Milky Way. I don't know. The fish planet, wherever that is, that's where he came from. He does not ever show any emotion at all. And if you notice this, now I don't know if you've noticed it, but I have. He doesn't blink. What's that all about? Like, how does he not, like, his eyes don't get dry? I don't understand it. But this is like the best 5 I can show you. You never see anything from him. Even when he's talking, it kind of is monotone. It just sort of drones on, and you realize that, I don't know, he's married, but I don't know what that marriage is like. It must be very interesting. All right, so this particular company, to keep 40 people working there meant I had to spend 640 people there to keep 40 people working there. In a year, I would send 640 to keep 40 people working there. So that is every person leaving within 3 weeks. The culture was awful. I mean, the worst culture, it's the worst culture I've ever seen. On an exit review that we took from one of our temporary employees, it said this: working here is like a cross between a federal penitentiary and a kinder care. I don't think that was a compliment. I thought, what must that be like? And I spent a lot of time trying to straighten this out, and I tried to explain to this company, this is what literally happened over a number of years we worked with them. People would call in to ask for a job and start the conversation by saying, I'm not going to that client that you have in Grove City. We didn't even offer it to them yet. They'd already heard from their friends in the neighborhood, like, don't go there, that's how bad it was. Okay, so Maggie Kyle is an investigator and an observer. This is a very interesting person to be in a leadership role. And I spent a lot of time with this person trying to help them. And this particular person, we would go to lunch, and if he said 4 words, that was a long conversation for us to have together. Like, he didn't talk very much. He's just watching me. And I'm trying to teach him the things that he needs to know to do a better job, and for us to do a better job. It was very, very difficult to do these things. Because he's a 5, so he doesn't engage. You can't connect with him. And then over time, our relationship was good, but he worked for Toner. So you already heard about Toner, right? Who fired me. As soon as Toner fired me, Kyle recognized it was time for him to leave as well. So this is what happened. because he was working with a very difficult people, and he needed to be by himself in an office. And he found a job where he could move to another state, far away from these horrible people, where he could shut the door. And that's where he still is today. He's somewhere with the door shut with his own thoughts. These are difficult people for you to connect with. You will find them. But I would tell you the easiest way that I've spotted them is that they just sort of do this, which is not very inviting, is it? It's like, I've closed down. Now I'm completely closed to you. And then they don't say anything. It's just, That's it. So these are difficult people, like the rest of you. Okay, this one now we're getting into some deep water. This is the individualist. It's a 4. Their sin is that they're envious of everybody. If this is you, I apologize. This is a harder one for people. What they fear is that they're not significant and they're not unique in any way. It's not true about them, but that's what they feel. And it's something that happened to them. Their fixation is melancholy. So they have a lot of negativity around them. And it's because they believe something happened to them. What they really want is for you to believe that you're unique. That's really what they want from you. They have to be special. They will tell you they're special. They will want you to believe that they're special. What happens to this person when they're young is that they feel like they weren't loved and other people got love that they should have had. So it's this actual or mostly perceived lack of love. This is why they do this. They feel like they were abandoned or deprived. They believe that they're the cause of it. Even though they're not the cause of it, they have nothing to do with the things that happen to them, it's still something that they perceive in a certain way. They will tell you, I'm the black sheep of my family. If you're the black sheep of your family, raise your hand. A couple of you, yeah. So you may be a 4. A 4 has this misfit sort of feel about them. They want to be the misfit. They want this because it explains something. But the saddest part of this one is that they really believe that there's this one special person, that if they can find that one special person that truly loves them, everything is going to be okay. And when that doesn't happen, they're melancholy, like they're a little bit depressed. They dwell on the past. So people who are always talking about the past, maybe this is why they do that. They don't believe that they're good enough. They focus on their expressions, and they will tell you how they feel without any shame or without any filters at all. And the reason I'm telling you this is because it makes other people unhappy. So if they're expressing their emotions, sometimes it drives people away because they're just willing to show the emotions that a lot of us just repress. They're self-referencing. They talk about themselves all the time. They're empathetic and they can sense other people's emotions, so they're great empaths. They believe that they're being judged, even when you're not judging them, they still believe that. They focus on what they don't have. If you dismiss them, if you don't address their values, if you're a bully, if you're mean, if you label them, these are things that are going to be triggerings for them. If you have intentions that are misconstrued, or you have if they're forced to be a persona, something that they're not, then they have all kinds of trouble with this because they're really trying to be unique and to find somebody to love them. So that's a little bit sad. They do find beauty in everything. Like, it's amazing. I have a sister that's like this. She sees beauty in everything. Her apartment looks like that. They encourage other people to be creative and do what they should do. They help others when that person is sort of having a difficult time. They're great people for that because they're already connected. But they're moody, self-conscious, disdainful, self-indulgent, and envious. And it's envy I'll have to describe for you. Envy is different than jealousy. Jealousy is, I wish I had what you had. Envy is, I wish you didn't have it. That's different, right? I don't want you to have it because I don't have it. That's a very different emotion than just jealousy. Jealousy is wishing you had it. That's fine. But wishing that other people don't have it because you don't have it, that's a different level. Would you believe Billie Eilish would be a 4? I mean, just looking at the picture, would you suggest that that might be true? Yeah. And would you believe Prince would be a 4? Yeah, it looks right. I mean, so these are, again, very successful people who are 4s. If you go to Wikipedia and you type in Enneagram 4s, you will come up with a list of Alanis Morissette, Adele. You're going to find everybody that you know that's some sort of a musician or an artist of some kind. You're going to find a lot of 4s on that list. For some reason, that's where they go. That's the outlet for them, and it does allow somebody like Prince to be unique. And from my view, after he did the halftime show at the Super Bowl, they should just have retired that completely. Like, there was nothing like this. Like, it was Prince. You don't need to see anybody else after that. So this individualist I'm calling George Goldberg because I'm making up names so that I don't have to use any real names. This person was one of my very first clients that I had a really, really tough time with. And this person was a very, very difficult person because they were this type of a person. They were a 4. At one point in time, this person was just so emotional with me. Totally badgering and bludgeoning me. It was a difficult relationship that we had. And one day I walked in, and this person sat down in their chair, and I literally started to watch this person cry. I had no idea what was going on, and I asked. And this person said to me, "My spouse is in the hospital with cancer, and I'm sleeping there at night, and then I'm working 12 hours a day here, and I don't know how much more I can take of this." And at that moment, our relationship changed immediately. So I sat down with her and I listened, and I let her talk about what she needed to talk about, and our relationship changed immediately after that. And instead of her being mad at me, she started to protect me. And when her, let's say, higher-ups decided that they wanted to do something different, they didn't get to do something different because of my relationship with this person. Sometimes you have to see something unique in somebody that they don't know that you can see. And if you show them that you can see this, with this type of a person, you can score well for doing this. If you recognize they need to be unique. How do you know that? If you were to look at my sister, you would notice that she looks like a Pam Anderson, and she's dressed like that, and she's got like a cheetah purse or something like that, and she's got something on. It's drawing attention, so you go, that's a unique person. And that's what they're trying to discover. Like, how could I be that person? Okay, number 3. Now, I have to tell you something at this point. Everything that I have said up until now is in the Diagnostic Statistical Manual for Psychoanalysis. This is the first thing you go to a psychoanalysis, they want to know your Enneagram, because it tells them almost everything they need to know to get started with you, except for the 3. Now, there's a reason that a 3 doesn't show up in the DSM, because you're American. It's your obligation to be an achiever. It's your obligation to look good, and it's your obligation to check things off of a box all day long. That's your birthright as an American. We're Puritans, right? We do these things. This is what we do. We work every day, except for when you come to a conference like this and just have fun, right? Say yes. You know you're having fun. Okay, they market their image. They are deceitful. They're not who they pretend to be. They fear being worthless. They're vain. They need to feel valuable. When they were young, they were loved for what they did. They were admired for being productive and checking things off of a box. They were loved for their achievements. That's what happened with their parents and the people around them. They were motivated to stand out. They try to become what people want, and they worry about what other people think about their failures. They're very concerned with their identity. They're image conscious. They focus on what they have to do. Very much goal-oriented, multitaskers. You know people that are threes. There's a lot of threes in this room, I promise you. There's probably a lot of eights in this room too. They will work to play to the crowd, and they're absolute workaholics. So the first thing I would tell you about triggering them is don't outshine the master, and I'll tell you the story about that. If you don't give them the stage, they're unhappy. If you make it difficult for them to be productive, they will not like you. Like the more difficult it is for them to do what they want to do, they will transfer that to you, and you will not be well liked. They don't like negativity or laziness. They're emotionally overreactive. They don't like not getting the affirmation around their hard work. They don't like people who procrastinate, and they hate inefficiency. Great leaders, highly effective people, great motivators, hardworking, determined people that get things done. Also status conscious, fixated on their image and how they are perceived by others, and overly competitive. Like Tony Robbins, Taylor Swift, Beyonce, and the only remaining superstar in movies that we have is Tom Cruise, right? That's it. We're left with just this. That's all. He's the last star. You don't believe me? Who else is there? Tom Hanks. All right, nice try. I don't think so. I like Tom Hanks, but he's no Tom Cruise, right? And another noteworthy, Jeb Blunt. 3. I know him well. He's an achiever. I walked into a meeting with a client, an actual client that I know. We've spent some time together, and I started sharing the data about his performance working with my company. And at some point, something just snapped. He thought that I was being smart, and he's smart. So both of us can't be smart at the same time in that room. One of us has to be dumb. I was one up, he was one down, if you know what that means. If you don't know what that means, buy the book. I was trying to help him understand something. And it got to this point where there was like, don't outshine the master, right? Don't outshine the master. That's how you get in trouble. He's the kind of guy that's wearing a white belt after the time he could be wearing a white belt. So like he's definitely vain in putting this out. And I realized if I keep talking, it only gets worse for me. So I stopped talking. And I said, here, tell me what you think. And I sat back and I listened. And I walked out with 2 people on my team, and I said, that's the last time I'm going to interact with Howard. All I can do is hurt you. You have to take it over from here. And they took it over from there. And then one day he came to my house. He was with my sisters, and he came to my house, and we've been like great friends ever since then. I just outshined him in that meeting. He didn't want that to happen. You have to be careful with achievers. You can trigger them. If you make things difficult for them, why are you looking at each other like that? Which one of you is the 3? As a person you know. And has this true for you? Yeah, you recognize it? Sometimes you can recognize these easier than others. The givers, type 2. This is a people pleaser. You know people pleasers? No boundaries, right? They'll do anything for you at any time. And I'll show you why. Their sin is pride. They believe that they're unlovable. They will flatter the heck out of you. Like they will say the nicest things to you because they want you to help them. That's why they do it. It's not sincere. It's an adaptation. They don't feel like they're worthy of love. That's what they want, is to believe that they're worthy of love. So this is why they go around trying to please everybody all the time. At some time, their needs weren't being met. They believed that they were too much for other people to take care of, so they feel bad about it. Why are you smiling, sir? Is it you? Another person, yeah. Seems when you know people, you find these, right? You find these kinds. They repress their own needs so that they can try to help other people, but they're only doing it because they hope that you're going to help protect them and help them. So that's why they're doing it. They want positive connections with other people. They'll definitely take your agenda. They don't like being controlled. They have a tough time with that. And they dislike attention. Very different than our threes, right? I'm going to have to talk to you guys when you're done. I need to know these stories. Like, this would probably have helped me if you would have given me the stories ahead of time. Their triggers are selfish people, rude people, not being appreciated for what they do. These are triggers for them. And they don't like harsh criticism. So they're naturally nurturing. They make people seem seen and welcome. They're generous, but they're also possessive, over-sentimental, people pleasers, and do things that they feel that they need to do to have those relationships. Like Dolly Parton, Mother Teresa, Desmond Tutu, and Jimmy Carter. Okay, so this person, one of my all-time favorite clients I've ever had. I had a location in Atlanta. They started sending us people that walked into their facility and sent them over to sign up with us. And the branch manager of that facility sent them people without doing a background check because she believed that they had already vetted them. She did not vet them. No one vetted them. So when we found that out in an audit, we ran the background checks on everybody working in this facility. Most of their rap sheets were 17 to 20 pages long. Now, we have a contract that says we won't send anybody that has certain felonies in their background. There's only 17 of them there now when I find this out. Would have been nice to get that earlier. And so I call Mars. I'm just going to call this person Mars. It's not their name. Nobody would name their child Mars except for Zuckerberg or Musk, one of those two guys. I don't know, somebody like that. So I call him and I say, listen, we made a huge mistake. Our branch manager thought that you had vetted these people, and while we were doing this, putting on our payroll for you, we should have been doing background checks. And he said, well, I'll talk to my team about this. And I said, you don't need to talk to your team. We did this. So it's my responsibility. I'm just calling you because I need you to tell them that we're going to remove these 17 people and replace them. And he said, yeah, but we have to take our responsibility for what we did. And I said, no, we did this. There's nothing that you need to talk to anybody about except me, because it's our mistake. We could be better. And I'm like, how could you be better? And I said, okay, will you just make that call for me? I mean, this is a people pleaser, and he is a people pleaser, and he was absolutely loved by everybody in his company and my company. It just worked that way. So these are easy people to work with. The perfectionist. Do you know you're a perfectionist? If you are, raise your hand. See, only perfect people would be brave enough to do that. Thank you, the four of you. The rest of us flawed people, us 7s and 8s and 9s and 5s, they're the most angry. Of the 3 anger types, it's 8, 9, and 1. Those are the 3 anger types. That's what they come from. They fear corruptness and imbalance. Their fixation is resentment. What they desire is to be good. They like integrity and they want balance. So I'll go back here for just 1 second. This is a good boy or a good girl. That's what they want to be. Even as adults, that's what they still want to be. They grew up in an environment where they had to take care of themselves. So what they started to do is to build rules so that they could be a good boy or a good girl. That's what they started to do. They started making their own rules as to how to live in this particular environment. The voice that they hear is their parents. That's the voice that they hear continually going on, is their parents. And so that voice is their inner voice. They dealt with anger instead of being angry, like an 8 would be angry, and an 8 would raise their voice. And there are other types here that would also deal with it that way. They just decided, I'm just going to be the best boy or the best girl ever. That's what they do as a child. So these are adaptations like very early in your life. The difficult part about a perfectionist is that when they're pissed off at you, you won't know they're pissed off. You will never know that they're pissed off. They're going to be angry, and it's all going to be under the waterline. You can't see it at all, but they are angry, and I promise you why they're angry, and I'll tell you why. If you make them bad or wrong, if anything is out of order, and I'll tell you the story about this one, if there's any imperfection, you got a problem with a perfectionist. They show up late, will kill them, laziness and sloppiness. There's a great story about Henry Kissinger, who's something like this. He had this aide, and he said, I need you to write this paper for me. Guy wrote the paper, left it on Kissinger's desk. Kissinger wrote a note on it and read and said, I think you can do better. And he put it on his desk. The guy rewrote it, put it back on Kissinger's desk. Kissinger brought it back with a note on it saying, I don't believe this is your best work. And he put it on. The guy spent weeks rewriting this report for Kissinger. And he walked in and he handed it to him and he said, Sir, this is the best I can do. And Kissinger said, okay, I'll read it. He didn't even look at the first. That's a little cruel, isn't it? A little bit. They respect values and beliefs. They're honest and transparent, except for the part that when they're angry at you, you won't know it because they'll still sound like they're being nice to you. They encourage others to be better than they are, but they're afraid of mistakes, they're critical, they're pessimistic, they're resentful, and they're impatient. You know them, you will know them when you see them, especially if you looked at this and you took a picture of it, you will know these people. I will tell you the one story on this one. Martha Stewart, Gandhi, Sully Sullenberg, and Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs, a noted number one, like a perfectionist. He would make people do things that were impossible. They said it was like he could just bend a force field around people to get these things done because he is a perfectionist. Again, you can be very successful. I did not have a story of a perfectionist in my life, but I was telling my dad I was doing this, and he said, I got one. So his boss's name was Whitney. They had a salesperson come in and give him a presentation. After the salesperson walked out of the room, Whitney looked at my dad and said, we'll never buy from that guy. And he said, why not? And he said, there's a typo in the PowerPoint. That's it. That was the end of it. And why is that? Because if he has a typo, then he may make me look like I'm not perfect. And if I'm not perfect, then I'm not a good boy or a good girl, and now nobody's going to like me, and I'm going to have the people above me unhappy. This is what you're dealing with. That's the last story I have for you. So here's what I want to tell you. There's strategic empathy, and there's strategic narcissism. If you are a strategic narcissist, most of us are, when we look at the client, we're like, they should do this because that's what I would do. It's not what they would do. They would do something different. And the more that you can understand who they are and how they got there, and the easier it is for you to see these, then the better your chance you'll have of knowing how not to trigger people and how to give them the things that they actually want. And if you give them the things that they want, if they need it to be perfect and you need to have 5 people look at it because you know you're working with a perfectionist, then do that before you do something that causes you to lose this. If you want to be strategically empathic, then you have to start saying, I wonder what a person that's like this, I wonder what they would think about this. And you have to get out of your own head and say, I'm going to focus on what I think they need, not what we need or what we would do right here. And if you do that, you will do better.